Mr. Tharman, welcome.
Hi.
You spoke just now of the need for a stronger focus on jobs and growth. What were the IMFC's main recommendations?
Well, I think first it's a recommendation to look long-term and not just short-term. In other words, we're not going to get velocity unless we have policies which are long-run focused. And they have to be policies that are first and foremost focused on jobs and growth. So what's more important than just getting the right size of fiscal deficits or the right size of QE or the right macroeconomic aggregates is composition. Do we have policies which are growth friendly? Do we have policies which will help create jobs, particularly for the young, who are the ones who are being left out currently, all over the world and especially in the advanced economies? And there's a lot more focus now in our discussions on that compositional issue in fiscal policy and structural policies. In the first phase of recovery from the crisis, there's been a bit of slash and burn, a bit too much of slash and burn, and that's part and parcel of the front loading of adjustment measures. But at this stage, there's a very strong view from around the table that we do need to focus on the type of adjustments that are likely to create jobs and to bring back private investor confidence. And that means not just any fiscal adjustment, but it's the right type of tax measures, avoiding tax increases if they're going to hurt private confidence, avoiding expenditure cuts if they hurt the wrong people in your society. So it's a more discriminating view now of how we should go about the adjustments and the post-crisis recovery.
There's been a lot of focus on repairing private and public balance sheets. You introduced a new concept the other day, social balance sheets. Can you explain what you meant with that?
We have two very big challenges on the social side. And the social side is woven into economic policy. First, there's a very serious and growing issue of equity between generations, intergenerational equity. If you look at the nature of the fiscal problem in the advanced economies, the largest component of the fiscal problem, looking out 8 to 10 years and beyond, is really intergenerational. It's about commitments that have been made, political commitments that have been made for soon to retire people, the baby boom generation, as well as those who are already retired, that have to be funded, but the money isn't there. And you either have to find a way of cutting back on those commitments, but doing it in an equitable way, where you can't do it for people who are poor or even middle income, but there's a fair bit of spending above that, or you've got to find a way of raising taxes. And if we don't think hard about it, we might get a grossly inequitable outcome. Inequitable within cohorts, within age cohorts, as well as across generations. That's a real big challenge because unlike the past, if we'd asked ourselves this question 20 years ago, we'd say, look, let the young pay for it. The older ones have worked hard, they came out of the war, they deserve it, right? But if you ask the question now, it's not obvious that the younger generation of workers is going to be better off than the people who are retiring soon. In some countries and at the state and local level in some of the larger societies, people who are still working, still relatively young, are going to get smaller pensions, smaller healthcare benefits, and their wages in real terms are not necessarily going to be better than those who are retiring soon. So we have to be quite forthright about these political choices and these social choices.
So that speaks to your earlier point about taking more of a sort of long-term perspective, looking at the mix of reforms.
Long-term perspective and one that's, that addresses the equity issue between generations quite squarely.
Now, switching to a different issue, some people have talked about global governance fraying at the edges a little bit, with some regions deciding to go it alone, for instance, by setting up their own development banks. What is your view, and what does it mean for the IMF?
Yes. Well, I think fundamentally, I don't see this as a reflection of the existing institutions, although they clearly can do with improvements in governance and representation, as much as a reflection of a changing world. It is now almost a multipolar world. I know the word has been used for some years, but it's still not quite a world with equal poles. but it's one with emerging poles, which are significant drivers of growth. And they want to have say, and they also want to have their own means, their own arrangements, within regions especially. Insurance arrangements, regional insurance, not just relying on global insurance, development financing arrangements. It's not necessarily a negative thing. If you think of the complexity of the world and the fact that you now have multiple poles, I think it's not such a bad idea that you first have strong international institutions, multilateral, well-governed and with strong international representation, complementing regional arrangements. You see it in trade, you see it in financial insurance. The Europeans had to do it because of crisis, but it's there for the long term. In Asia, we did it after a crisis, and it's also there for the long term. And getting a complementarity between the IMF and regional financial arrangements, like the Chiang Mai Initiative in Asia, like the European institutions, the EMF, is I think the way you achieve a plus-plus world. It's not a zero-sum game. It's a plus-plus world, and it means strengthening the international institutions and at the same time making sure that there's a sensible role for regional institutions who know their regions well and that can also call on additional regional resources.
Minister Tharman, thank you so much.
Thank you.